Hello, Happy New Year. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Last time I think we were reading Recovery of a Sense of Compassion, and I think the first part was fear, and now we are moving on to enthusiasm. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna try not to meander too much. Okay. Quote, "It must take so much discipline to be an artist." End quote. We are often told by well-meaning people who are not artists but wish they were. What a temptation. What a seduction. They're inviting us to preen before an admiring audience, to act out the image that is so heroic and Spartan and false. A quote from Duke Ellington and Irving Mills. "It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing." As artists, grounding our self-image in military discipline is dangerous. In the short run, discipline may work, but it will work only for a while. By its very nature, discipline is rooted in self-admiration. Oh, okay. I'm not gonna. Maybe not. So I disagree with that. Okay, but let's just carry on reading. Maybe she's coming to a point. Okay. Think of discipline as a battery, useful but short-lived. Not if it's rechargeable. Sorry. We admire ourselves for being so wonderful. The discipline itself, not the creative outflow, becomes the point. Okay, that I understand. The discipline itself, not the creative outflow, becomes the point. It's almost like discipline becomes the sort of the goal or the so-called envisioned outcome or whatever, and the creative outflow is like almost the process. And if you're focusing on the discipline, you're kind of not really paying much attention to the process, and I think that's a way that one could get stuck, and that would then make sense in terms of, okay, if you're stuck and you're not paying attention to the process, and then you perhaps become fixated on yourself, or you're admiring yourself. It's difficult to talk about that whole thing, but I suppose you can get distracted by, it says there's self-image, so it's like perhaps you get if you have a self-admiration and your focus is discipline, and you're kind of not paying attention to the process, and it's like, okay, that there's something wrong there. And I think that it's almost like you get stuck, or like she's saying, she mentioned I think it was a little bit before, the seduction of that or whatever. So it's almost like being stuck at let's say looking at the vision board and not doing anything about it, or you get stuck at the place where, I don't know, you can even get, I don't know if I should go into the territory of mirrors, but I literally want to make a video around mirrors. There's so much to say there. It's, wow. Anyway, but it's like, okay, and then it's almost like it can become a distraction, which can almost, that's why I'm saying stuck, because that can make you sort of a little bit more fixed and maybe more rigid, and more sort of stark or stiff, and maybe cutting out emotions or whatever, and just sort of like, and when you become militant, I don't know, many years ago I went through a phase like that, and everyone would say, oh, you're so strong or whatever, but it's like, it wasn't nice. It wasn't. No, it was like I became like that out of a bunch of things. That became like an outcome, and I remember going through a certain phase. I mean, I don't think it was for a full year, but it was for a good amount of months where like nothing could flow, in terms of emotion especially. Nothing could move me. I was like a statue. I was like, bam, bam. And that was almost like taking discipline, which I think is a really great thing. But when you take that and maybe manipulate it, or you don't understand what that is, or you don't apply it properly, or you don't integrate it into a process of becoming more, a process of helping you to create structure and therefore sort of putting it into sort of a practice as a part of the process, as a part of helping you to create pockets in which you can walk into and feel safe to engage in that creative flow. Now, when it gets a bit extreme, is almost like when discipline is like by itself and that becomes the focus, and you can even, I think sometimes you could, maybe it's not a thing, but I mean, for me it makes sense almost like, not completely, but I'm not sure of the words exactly, that discipline, upholding that constructed image of perfection, or striving for perfection, and maintaining this image of discipline, which is kind of a construct. And I'm not sure about the self-admiration. I would say it's kind of the opposite of that. So, I mean, self-admiration, discipline is rooted in self-admiration. Yeah, no. I mean, somebody would have to explain that to me, and I don't think she's doing it well. But, I mean, I suppose with my experience and things like that, my understanding and my inner knowing of discipline and all the things about, like, yeah, it's different, but it's also like worked into my DNA. It's a part of me. But I will say that if you take discipline and like, and you look at it and you try and be that, as that you are that is your identity. I mean, you can already hear that's whoa, that's a bit dangerous, because that is not a thing that is like living in it. That's where like therapy can really help, or just talking to someone, or at least identifying, okay, well, am I sort of trying to uphold this discipline because I think that's closest to who I think that I am, or that it would be something that I would use to stand as, in order to get to some sort of, and in a that's sort of almost extreme. So it's almost like the discipline, and you become militant, but have this, sort of goal to go, like, that you must go from discipline to perfection, but you know that that's not good enough. So it's like, and it's hell inside, but you don't that doesn't show, because it's like nothing can pass through. And like, and for example, you can reach for perfection, but it gets a little bit more twisted, especially if you can't feel and you're numb. Then you like it gets weird in your head, and there are emotions, but you don't even know where they are. They're being suppressed or oppressed, and I suppose maybe the emotions are being suppressed, and your true identity is being oppressed, and then you're just something else. You're actually just sort of a remnant, and nothing is. So it's like, oh, it's horrible. And I remember, and it's almost like, you have this idea of like, okay, to achieve or to get to Yeah, okay, perfection, that's okay, but beyond perfection, it's like 112%. And then maybe it will be, maybe I'll consider it. But for me, like looking back, I did that. I did that a lot. And I think that if you're in that case, it's dangerous to push yourself that far because it can easily be, I mean, that is destructive. I mean, especially if you believe that perfection is a thing that you can be, or worse, that you can become beyond perfection and think that you can maintain that. I don't think that's, well, thinking too far, like, but believing that, like, okay, that's the goal and nothing else underneath is, and it's like, in order to achieve that type of thing, it's like you become harder and harder and harder and harder, and you're like going straight for that, and you don't, it's like, and things, there's like destruction around you, and that's not really bothering you because it's like you become, and that's scary later on if you are in a place where you're suffering the consequences of that, especially when the self-destruction, in order to survive and achieve that, becomes like risky in terms of like your life, and it's hard there because it's, you can't connect with that care that you're supposed to have, and then it's like you feel numb and you don't care, but you become more and more separated from your heart, from your soul, and it's like a really weird place to be in, because you then look at the world, or you look at yourself, and it's like whatever, but you're still pushing, because perhaps you're in a mindset that you think that your self-worth or something can get awakened in you. I don't even know if you can push past and break through that, or become, like, achieve beyond perfection, which is it's a and something that I'm grateful for, but it's not like it happened to be, but it's almost like I was so stuck that, and a lot of things were happening, and like there was distraction, and I became militant, and that was, I think, in a way, something that was sort of, I don't know, it became this really hard, like, I was a hard person. Other people like, oh, you're so strong, and I'd really not really like that. I'd be like, no, I'm not, and I'd probably say that in ways where it's like I knew as a matter of fact that I wasn't, but it seemed that I was, and inside I was like, I am, like, I knew that it was like carnage, but that didn't reflect in any way. It was so tucked away. It was like that was being strangled. My heart, my everything, the person, my whatever, a connection was being like, and there's a beautiful worship song, Something Has to Break. Anyway, but I'm thinking of it now, and I just think, yeah, there's something, well, in my experience, and this is why I'm grateful, but it is literally, it's not due to me. Like, it was like God's hand that, because, yeah, and where, yeah, I went there, and I broke, like, I literally broke, and it's like, you break through, and it's almost like you break through that stuff, and then you fall down, because it's like all of the stuff that was constructed, it comes crashing down, like, on top of you. You get, like, buried, and like, and you hit and you're shattered, and it's like, then it's like you're fragmented, and it's a mess. It's like, and I'm telling you, like, without God, like, I don't see a way that I could have ever become human again. Like, and I remember after many, many months, and this was actually the only thing that I wanted to say, but I remember I went through many, 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 many months, and it was torture inside. And yeah, I think the breaking part is like this hard exterior, which everyone else is like, oh, you're so strong, and I'm like, mm-mm. Like, when that gets broke and shattered, like, I mean, just think, it's like, and that all falls off, and that's a part of you, but like, then it's like, you're not trapped, but you're loose, and you're vulnerable, and this stuff is crashing onto you, and it is destruction, and you're getting the consequences, but there is a moment which is like mercy and grace, I'm telling you. And I remember that it was months and months and months that I could not cry. I couldn't cry. It was held inside. I could not cry. I couldn't. And I remember when that, I can't remember what was the things, but it came to a point after many, many months where I remember like there was it's like a breakthrough, a connection, I don't know. And but I remember witnessing the break in which, like, all the, by break I mean like crack or whatever that let like a tear come, and I was like, and that was the beginning of, that was almost like a sign of life. And I think that was also a place where I began to think slowly but surely, not that I'm some emotional guru, but experience emotion, or start whatever stage or of grief or whatever it is, and that's important. It's important to do. It's so it's really horrible to be hurting and to be like all this stuff inside, and you can't even cry. It's like, it's almost like it's like a hate trauma, I don't know. And this random thing that I'm thinking of now, and I don't know the whole story behind it, but it's like, you see some people with a tear, like a tear tattoo. I met this guy and he said no, he got it in prison, or because he was grieving his mom who had died while he was there. And but he came out, and I bumped into him. He was a car guard, and I saw his demeanor, and he seemed like sad. Like I felt his vibe. It was like he was sad and mourning and about something that he cared about, or someone that he cared about. And I didn't walk past. Like, I was like, hey, are you okay? And then I saw the tattoo, and I said, oh, okay. And then I asked him more and more, and yeah, we started to have a conversation, and yeah, for some reason I'm thinking about it. It's like, sure, and it's hard. It's hard. And I think, yeah, everyone can relate in their own way, because, you know, we all bleed the same. We are all human. Maybe some people don't embrace that, and maybe other people work really hard at trying to maintain that, or trying to become more humane, but, you know, anyway, I think being alive, living, like flowing water, like the aliveness is key. So that's like bringing me back to here, this creative outflow, which I could think, okay, the tear was the beginning of the creative outflow, which ultimately could have been like the wash of healing or peace or whatever, that then like through precipitation and all that cycle could come wash over me again a little bit later. Anyway, sorry about that. That part of us that creates best is not a driven, disciplined automaton functioning from willpower with a boost of pride to back it up. This is operating out of self-will. You know the image. Rising at dawn with military positions, saluting the desk, the easel, the drawing board, etc. Over any extended period of time, being an artist requires enthusiasm more than discipline. Enthusiasm is not an emotional state. It is a spiritual commitment, a loving surrender to our creative process, a loving recognition of all the creativity around us. Enthusiasm, from the Greek filled with God, is an ongoing energy supply tapped into the flow of life itself. Enthusiasm is grounded in play, not work. Far from being a brain-numbed soldier, our artist is actually our child within, our inner playmate. Excuse me. As with all playmates, it is joy, not duty, that makes for a lasting bond. Yeah, I mean, in a way, if you're like with your inner child or whatever, and maybe it's hard to connect, or maybe there is a disconnect with that inner child because of some certain things not being so aligned. So it's like there's no flow, there's nothing to grip onto, because it's like if it's duty and work, it's like it seems but these other things are like it almost seems like there can be a connection established, like a real true bond, where it's not forced or transactional. Okay, true. Our artist may rise at dawn to greet the typewriter or easel in the morning stillness, but this event has more to do with a child's love of secret adventure than with an ironclad discipline. What other people may view as discipline is actually a play date that we make with our artist child. I'll meet you at 6 a.m. and we'll goof around with that script, painting, sculpture, etc. Our artist child can best be enticed to work by treating work as play. Paint is great gooey stuff. 60 sharpened pencils are fun. Many writers eschew a computer for the comforting, companionable clatter for a solid typewriter that trots along like a pony. Wow, that's vivid. Like, I just want to, like, hashtag a key word here. Imagination. Oh man, that is so important. And, if you haven't heard of Dr. Ian McGilchrist, I highly recommend go check his stuff. Go check out his work. Like, seriously. It's... Okay, in order to work well, many artists find that their workspaces are best dealt with as play spaces. Dinosaur murals, toys from the Five and Dime, tiny miniature Christmas lights, paper mache monsters, hanging crystals, a sprig of flowers, a fish tank, ... I think that list can go on and on. And then she gives a quote by, I'm going to mess up this name. René Francois Ghislaine Magritte. Art evokes the mystery without which the world would not exist. Art evokes the mystery without which the world would not exist. As attractive as the idea of a pristine cell, monastic in its severity, is to our romanticized notion of being a real artist, the workable truth may be somewhat messier than that. Most little kids would be bored silly in a stark, barren room. Our artist child is no exception. Remember that art is a process. Amen. Trust the process. The process is supposed to be fun. For our purposes, the journey is always the only arrival. The journey is always the only arrival. I love that. I super love that. That's beautiful. The journey is always the only arrival. I mean, take that, maybe write it down, feel and internalize that, and maybe think on it, and just think oh, just a little bit. Spend just 30 seconds thinking, well, what does that mean? Or like let it come to you and tell you, like, it's worth just a little bit of ponder, because that can lead to wonder, which could trigger some kind of enthusiasm to engage with the creative flow in order to rearrange or curate or adjust the atmosphere of that possible play space in which you can connect with your inner child and create and be productive, as well as becoming tapped into that flow state through imagination, and also be present, and want to participate, or look forward to, and remember constantly, and refresh in and replenish in the process, and trusting the process, and putting your trust in God, and allowing Him to guide you, and maybe even it's not only you're not the only one. You're never alone. Never alone. You're not the first, last, or only either. So it's wow, I mean, you being here is a beautiful miracle. So it's you might as well step into the process. Trust the process, and trust the person who's guiding you through that process, which is God. And with God, you are not only going through some process. The process is a part of the roads, and the whole journey to your destiny. And it's not all about the destination. You don't even know what that is, but it's with God, okay, God, I'm going to trust you wherever it is, as long as it's with you, as long as I get to be with you. Come, follow me in, I'll walk with you. And I choose life, and I choose love, and I want to get to know this light and love and word and God, to eventually look at God and see, or see God or see Christ reflect who I am, and I reflect Christ. And this is getting into the fourth dimensional thinking, and possibly further. It's that's where words don't suffice. Okay, so, but is remember that art is a process. The process is supposed to be fun. For our purposes, the journey is always the only arrival. And that may be interpreted to mean that our creative work is actually our creativity itself, at play in the field of time. At the heart of this play is the mystery of joy. I mean, that's worth a try. It really is. Okay. So I'm thinking, maybe I should pause it here and then do the next. Okay, so the next thing that's coming up is creative U-turns. Ba-ba-ba-bam. Okay. Sorry. Okay. What do I want to say? Yeah. So, how am I going to say it? This may seem super random, but it's maybe someone needs to hear it. If you have been hushing yourself and suppressing stuff that you've been wanting to say or whatever.